Hello everyone, welcome to East-West Horizon. This is California. I'm Sylvia Tian. Since the Ukraine crisis, the world has been changing at an unimaginable speed. In the current circumstance, the biggest concern is the sluggish momentum of US dollar hegemony. Putin turned the tide to save the ruble, while China is quietly using RMB to settle resource products such as oil and ores, gradually expanding its influence as a reserve currency. At the beginning of the Ukraine crisis, the United States confiscated Russian assets, which was even more severe than when it treated Nazi Germany. And kicking Russia out of the SWIFT system seems like a thunderbolt, but it scares all countries, fearing that they will be sanctioned by the same means in the future. How to get out of the SWIFT system without paralyzing their own economy? Countries have already made preparations since the beginning of the Ukraine crisis. The Russian ruble before the war was 80 rubles per dollar, but Putin used rubles to bind energy transactions, forcing Europe to settle energy in rubles, resulting in 58 rubles per dollar now. De-dollarization has begun in Europe, in Australia, and 21 other countries. The US-led currency war is putting the dollar at risk. The good news currently is that Australia, which is extremely anti-China, has also begun to use RMB to settle iron ore in China at the CIF price. At the same time that Saudi Arabia uses RMB to settle oil, Russia uses RMB to settle natural gas and oil, etc. The key resource products have been separated from the original US dollar settlement and turned directly to RMB. When the United States launched a trade war with China in 2018, Australia was the most active. Recently, a shipment of iron ore exported by Australian iron ore giant BHP Billiton arrived at the port of Rizhao in Shandong, China. However, unlike the previous huge iron ore trade between China and Australia, this batch of Australian iron ore was settled in RMB for the first time. Not only settled in RMB, but also changed the settlement mechanism for the first time to trade as CIF spot. This means that after Australia's iron ore is shipped into Chinese port, Chinese buyers will settle it after they get it. Legally speaking, the transaction is regarded as a transaction within China, not an overseas transaction. The delivery of iron ore at Australian ports can of course be used in US dollar, but the delivery of iron ore in Chinese ports is of course in RMB. Chinese buyers have no risk at all for spot transactions at the CIF price of Chinese ports. For example, if the cargo ship carrying this batch of iron ore is intercepted, inspected, or destroyed by wind and waves, Australia will be responsible for all losses.
China's continued to take measures to help support the economy. To me, looking forward, the key thing is China has the room to provide more support to the economy going forward. And in particular, we would highlight fiscal policy. That is, there's room for the government to increase the budget deficit, to really provide a lift to demand in the second half of the year. And I would highlight probably the most effective way to do that would be to find measures that help increase consumption.
And we just published a paper in May about it on research and development, is China drives our innovation. And it's not people in laboratories trying to figure out new things that we still do in our home markets. It is applications that actually make products better. Chinese customers are driving our innovation.
CIF spot transactions are also settled in RMB, which is clearly beneficial to China and also shakes the hegemony of US dollar. If the goal can be achieved without fighting, but with other means and tools, it will be the least costly way to increase influence. For example, China's foreign aid for infrastructure construction, China's manufacturing, China's 5G, China's space station, and China's electric vehicles. Now, China's RMB has also moved from being isolated to the center of the world stage. Not that the RMB has now won a decisive victory, no. The RMB is still far from challenging the dollar's top spot in the global reserves. But a new survey shows central banks are increasingly keen to use the RMB as a reserve currency. About 85% of central bank reserve managers said they already held or were interested in holding RMB. Because of China's growing economic and political power, it is likely to replace the dollar's global dominance. On average, central bank foreign exchange managers want to increase their holdings of RMB in reserves within 10 years. Foreign exchange reserves are used to protect the national currency and to be deployed in times of crisis. The average share of central banks held in dollars was 63%, down from 69%. More than 81% of respondents to the UBS survey said China's RMB would benefit from the shift to a multipolar world. Of course, we still have to realize that despite the increased interest in RMB, RMB is still far from challenging the dollar's position in global reserves. However, the RMB's status as the official reserve currency is continuing to strengthen. According to the currency composition of official foreign exchange reserves, data released by the International Monetary Fund recently, in the fourth quarter of 2021, the proportion of RMB in coffer set a new record. The proportion of RMB in global foreign exchange reserves ranks fifth in the world. Since the fourth quarter of 2018, the RMB has been the world's fifth largest international reserve currency for 13 consecutive quarters. At present, more than 70 foreign central bank institutions have entered China's interbank bond market, and more than 75 international and regional monetary authorities have included RMB into their foreign exchange reserves. The latest survey made by the Official Forum of Monetary and Financial Institutes, an independent international think tank, showed that about 30% of the world's central banks plan to increase their holdings of RMB reserves in the next 24 months, and 70 of them are considering increasing their holdings in the long term. All right, that's all for today. Which do you think is more beneficial to reserves, the US dollar or the RMB? Comments, likes, and concerns are welcome. See you on the next show.